Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of It. Welcome to Derry. It was called Now You See It. And as the episode starts, we're at a carnival in 1908, where a boy goes inside the freak show house and sees a hall of mirrors. He also sees someone in the shadows who tells him to come closer, and when he does, an old man who's missing an eye laughs loudly, and the boy runs out straight into the arms of his father. His father then calls the boy Francis, as in Francis Shaw, General Shaw, a sissy, but tells him he won him a prize, a new slingshot. On the way home, their car breaks down, so they buy a jug of water from a local native girl on the side of the road. Short on money, Francis gives her his new slingshot in trade for the water, and later, they're playing outside with the other kids. When Francis runs into the woods, the girl, Rose, begs him to come back and won't follow him. All alone, he's chased by the one-eyed old man from before, who turns into a monster running on all fours with some familiar rows of big teeth. But Rose hits it in the head with a rock from her slingshot, and they flee, reaching safety outside the edge of the woods where the creature won't follow them. In the present, Lily is back at Juniper Hill, surrounded by the wails and laughs of crying patients, when a housekeeper tells her she believes that she has in fact seen the impossible just as she says, and that if Ronnie means so much to her, she'll find a way to make things right between them. Meanwhile, Ronnie's dad, Hank, is in jail and being questioned by Chief Bowers, who wants to know where he was on the night of the murders at the movie theater. Hank continues to insist that he was at home, but Bowers reveals that someone has written a sworn statement that she saw him outside that night. At the military dig site, the general decides there's only so much that Halloran can do by just looking at maps, and that he needs to be put on top of the site. So he sends him up in a helicopter with Hanlon and Paulie Russo, telling the officers to think of Halloran as a compass and to go wherever he directs them. Halloran has been holding a cigar box the whole time, and inside is, well, a familiar slingshot. And as he touches it, his face goes rigid as if he's seeing something. He tells Harlan and Russo to turn east before he closes his eyes. When he opens them again, he's walking towards the back of the helicopter. In his mind, though, he's no longer in the chopper, but locked in a sewer facing a familiar circus wagon with a sign for Pennywise the Dancing Clown. The sign drops to reveal a stage and two glowing eyes in the darkness. And a voice asks, "Who are you?" Halloran looks up to see a mound of dead, floating bodies, including that of his own grandmother, and tries to flee the sewer through a locked hatch, but he's actually opening the rear hatch of the helicopter and would, at that point, I guess, run out of the helicopter trying to flee the sewer. So Hanlon has to tackle him so that he doesn't fall out to his death. Back on the ground, Halloran tells General Shaw that something saw him, and that if they keep going, something bad is coming. When Lily returns to school, she seeks out Ronnie and promises she'll tell the police the truth about what she saw, but realizes that no one will believe her unless they can get proof. So she's come up with the idea to photograph the creature or entity that's been showing up and wreaking havoc in town. But Ronnie asks who they're going to get to develop the film, which leads them to Will. In conversation, Will's new friend Rich reveals a knowledge of evil spirits gained from his Cuban relatives who've long been practicing Santeria, which he can use to make the evil reveal itself. At a local tribal meeting in Derry, Rose tells her nephew not to do anything about the dig site yet because she doesn't want to stop the military until she knows what they're doing out there. Later, at Rose's second-hand shop, Shaw walks in to see his old friend for the first time in 50 years, saying he'd forgotten all about her and Derry until he recently came back to town after having been working for the Air Force elsewhere. And Rose says that's normal for people from Derry who leave and come back. From their conversation, she finds out that he's in charge of the dig, but he lies and says that they're digging up unmarked burial grounds so they can install water pipes. Shaw asks her to help the military identify the areas they would need to stay away from in order not to disturb any graves, and Rose says she'll talk to the town council but can't promise anything. Meanwhile, Halloran shows up for dinner at the Hanlon house, where he inquires about their son Will's whereabouts, but later, when the two men are alone on the porch, Hanlon points out that he never told Halloran that he had a son. Halloran says that he must have heard someone mention the fact that he has a son, but is then forced to confess that he can see things without seeing things, which, to his surprise, Hanlon doesn't think is crazy, since just before Dick asked about his son, he felt something that he couldn't describe, saying the only other time he felt it was the night that he was attacked. Hanlon tells Halloran to stay out of his head, and Halloran agrees because, well, the man saved his life. Meanwhile, Will, Lily, Rich, and Ronnie are hanging out in a graveyard, sitting around a circle of candles. Rich is speaking a prayer for the dead in Spanish, but after a short pause, nothing happens. Lily and Ronnie are ready to call it quits because they don't believe it'll work. And Ronnie is also upset that Will doesn't believe what she saw. She gets on her bike and Lily leaves with her. Will and Rich are left behind, but abandon the circle to try to catch up. As they pedal toward the cemetery gates, the gate actually moves further and further away. They ride through the grass, but the ground starts caving in. And then the spirits of their dead friends, now with rotting faces, float above them and chase them through the cemetery. Lily manages to snap a few pictures, but everyone gets separated. And in fact, everyone takes turn using the camera after it keeps falling out of everyone's hands and needs to be picked up by the next person going by on the bike. Will, in fact, ends up all alone at the mausoleum with the camera, where inside a hand appears and he takes a photo of it as he screams. Lily, Rich, and Ronnie make it to the cemetery limits simultaneously and anxiously wait for any sign of Will until he suddenly appears, much to their relief. The kids then break into the school darkroom to develop their photos. One by one, each of the ghosts' faces is revealed. But when Will's last picture develops, something is standing in the distance out of focus with glowing eyes. It's a clown, he says. And that's where the episode ended. So this show continues to be really, really good. I'm really enjoying the show. The, production design is excellent. The aesthetics are excellent. There's a great mystery unfolding in several directions. Where was Hank that night? Why was he not actually home, but also not at the theater? Where was he? What was he doing? What exactly do the native people know about it, and what exactly is their history with it? I talked a little bit about some of the stuff that the book goes into in a previous review, but we don't know if that's necessarily exactly part of the narrative of this show and film universe, so it remains to be seen. But, Rose clearly knows a little something about the entity. For example, why can't it leave the woods? Why can't it go past that tree line? Is that because the native people have figured out a way to contain him? Again, clearly they know about it, and they know its limitations or some of its limitations. And so why is that? What's that all about? Anyway, why did Hanlon sense something creepy when he was being attacked that he also senses in the presence of Halloran? What's that about? They're also doing a really good job at showing that the whole situation in Derry is about there are generational threads. And I've talked about this before as well, because of course it's a cycle that repeats every 27 years. And so it has an effect on descending generations as time goes on. So, where the general is dealing with it now in the present as a general, he dealt with it in the past as a kid. And as the Hanlons are dealing with racism in the town, other residents previously dealt with it as well, because, it is sort of a festering force in the town, even when it's not active. So stuff gets passed down to generations, or things repeat over the generations. And we're seeing that as the show goes on. I think the best scenes in this episode undeniably are the cemetery scene, which was insane. And also the scene in the sewer, the scene when Halloran basically psychically connects with Pennywise and sees like his lair, and Pennywise sees him back, and, it causes him to almost fall out of the helicopter. That was wild. That was a really, really good scene. So I really enjoyed that. Some interesting stuff that happened in the episode. Halloran tells Hanlon, "Oh, I must have heard someone mention that you had a son." And that's kind of a callback to The Shining, where the character also tells the kid's mother, the main character kid's mother, that he knows that the kid's nickname was Doc because he must have heard someone say it, but really he knows it because he's psychic. So it's a callback that shows that he falls back on that same excuse whenever he gets caught sort of knowing things that he wouldn't otherwise know. So I thought that was cool. We saw how it is that when people leave Derry, they don't remember having come from Derry, which we've seen in the movies. But again, they're sort of showing that. And, why is that? Right? Because you'd think that Pennywise wouldn't make people forget, because why would he bother to do that? He would want people to continue to be terrorized even if they moved away, you would think. Or he wouldn't care if they were, so why would he do anything that would make them forget Derry? Have the Native Americans managed to do something so that when you're not in Derry, you don't know about Derry, so that nobody sort of consciously chooses to go to Derry based on, hey, there's this place called Derry, we should check it out, to keep them safe from it? Is that what it is? Who knows? But that's interesting. One thing about the episode that confused me was when Lily talked in the past about having spent time at Juniper Hill, I assumed it was like a long time. Like, weeks or months. And when she talked about not wanting to go back, I assumed she meant that she was afraid she would be locked up there for a while. Yet it seems like she just had a little visit for like a week this time. And I'm wondering what that's about. Like, why would the people in charge there think that a brief stint of a few days made any difference where they could send her back out? Like, that doesn't make any sense, but I don't know. One thing I really want to talk about is the fact that during the opening sequence, the audience is shown this little girl dressed up like a clown and wearing Pennywise's makeup. And that begs the question, is, she Pennywise's daughter? Does Pennywise have offspring, like a daughter? Or is she just a random clown that maybe Pennywise took inspiration from for his makeup when he came up with the Pennywise form? What is that about? There is some speculation that the true form of it, which in the books is shown to be a gigantic spider-type creature, at some point had offspring, because there's a whole thing about it having laid a bunch of eggs in its lair. And so is its offspring just like it, and is it another it entity that's out in the world somewhere in Derry working with it right in front of everybody? And if so, is it possibly the lady at Juniper Hill who was talking to Lily? Because she says some sort of prophetic things. First of all, she tells Lily that she believes her when she says she's seen things. And well, why is that? Because she knows there are things, because she is a thing. And she would be about the right age. So there's some speculation that it's her, but this could all be red herrings. So it could all just be the imagination running wild. But we'll have to see. It'll be interesting to see if she is somehow connected to the it entity. But that's really it. So, I'm liking the show. I think it's really good. And I just can't wait every week to see the next episode. I'm going to get out of here for now. I'll be back with another video soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.